And for AFEX Commodity Update, it's time to review another week ended for the week August 17th and 23rd. AFEX Commodity Market Summary components were all in the red. And we have Michael Martins, Portfolio Manager at AFEX, with the details. Hello, Michael. Let's have it.
Hi, Ladi. Good morning. Thank you for having me once again. It's always a pleasure to be here. So just to give you a brief update of as regards to what happened on the exchange in the week under consideration, the total value of transactions traded on the exchange, as you can see in the table in front of you, fell by 92.42%. From 0.33 billion to close the trading week at 0.025 billion. The total number of contracts traded on the exchange also fell by 84.48%, from 6,986 contracts to close the trading week at 1,084 contracts. The total number of deals was also in the red, falling by 74.29%, from 35 deals to close the trading week at just 9 deals. The AFEX Commodities Index, which is the ACI, also fell by 0.17%, from 442.50 points to close the trading week at 441.77 points. The AFEX Export Index, which is the AEI, remained unchanged in the week under consideration, staying at 170.50 points. With regards to the volume of contracts traded on the exchange, there was a general decline in the volume of contracts traded on the exchange, with the only major change happening with maize, which traded from 392 contracts last week to trade 1,077 contracts in this week. With regards to the price changes on the exchange, we generally saw only green with maize, which went up by 1.22%, gaining 294 naira in the contract value to close the trading week at 24,000 naira. With regards to the commodities that lost value in the week, the highest was paddy rice, which lost 5.15%, losing 1,195 naira in the contract value to close the trading week at 22,000 naira per contract, followed by sorghum, which lost 3.30%, losing 695 naira in the contract value to close the trading week at 20,340 naira per contract. And last but not least, with regards to price changes, we saw the price of soybean fall slightly by 0.03%, losing just 12 naira in the contract value, losing just 12 naira to close the trading week at 33,500 naira per contract. And as we always say, if you want to know more about the commodities market, you can always go to our website, which is www.afexnigeria.com. And if you want to get started trading commodities, you can download our app, which is available on iOS and Android.
Just wondering, the harvest season is upon us. What impact is it having on activities on the AFEX Commodities Exchange?
Thank you very much, Ini, for that question. As you have seen, with a lot of the commodities market update that we have done in recent weeks, there have been very few price changes across board. With regards to also volume too, you would notice that the volume that has been traded on the exchange has fallen significantly in the recent weeks. And also, like I said, with regards to price changes don't really occur that frequently. And you would notice that for this week's price update, we only generally saw price changes with regards to grains. All the other export commodities saw little to no change at all. And I think that's also largely indicative of what is going on in the general commodities market at large, which is to say, we are not necessarily having as much trading activity in the commodities market as we generally do have during the months of harvest, and then the subsequent months after that.
All right, Michael, thank you so much. Well, we have to switch a little bit now, because following the theme for this year's Feed Nigeria Summit, which is targeted at resuscitating the country's disrupted food system after the COVID pandemic, one of the ways that have been identified is through strategic partnership. The question becomes, how can we make building and strengthening Nigeria's food systems a collective responsibility, especially with the effect of the pandemic on food production? Well, we have yet from AFEX, the investments manager, Mr. Yusuf Ogumbi, joining us now to answer this question and a whole lot more. Good to have you, Mr. Ogumbi. It's been a while. Good to have you back.
Good morning, Ini. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. So with every sector of the economy adjusting to the new realities, what strategic measures can we put in place in the agricultural sector to resuscitate or rebuild the country's food system?
Thank you. So COVID-19 taught us a number of lessons in the agriculture sector, and one of them is that we need to be quite innovative about our business models. Companies, farmers, processors, everybody operating in this space have to be innovative and creative about how they approach this sector. One thing we've seen so far is the concentration and a lot of efforts being put in smallholder farming, aggregation of smallholder farmers and the likes. But then we begin to see new blue ocean opportunities here and there, and we think that's where we need to go to now. We are beginning to max out some of the opportunities in the smallholder aggregation, smallholder business models, and it might begin to pay some, we might need to start paying attention to other opportunities in this space. And I think this might be some of the new realities we need to adjust to. Not to say that we need to abandon smallholder farming in any way, no. What we are just saying is we need to innovate around that part and then also innovate in other sections of the sector as well, so that we max out the potential that the sector provides.
Into picture of some of these opportunities.
Yeah, so one way of boosting agriculture is the way we've seen so far in the last 4 to 5 years, bringing together smallholder farmers, extending finance to them, providing market access, providing extension services to these farmers. But another way we see that we can also boost production and achieve the core mandate of food security is also trying to develop commercial farms across the country. And we might be innovative around that as well. You typically expect your commercial farms to be 2,000 hectares and the likes, but then we can decide to say, because we have some challenges tied to this agriculture, say for instance unemployment and the likes, we can decide to be innovative around that and say, rather than having such a huge chunk of land, 2,000 hectares in some places, we can break that down into pieces, bits and pieces, and have youths come across, youths, women and people in agriculture take some portions of this land and do something we call in-grower schemes across the country. So these are some other opportunities that we are beginning to see, in-grower schemes, commercial farms being set up across the country, especially within the context of the staple crop processing zones. We begin to see these opportunities as well, in addition to the smallholder farmer aggregation models that we've also seen so far.
Well, does this cover the challenges of insecurity, access, road access, infrastructure? How do you hope to handle that? I mean, even when you talk about the smallholder setting, you talk about funding. Now, if you want to make it even bigger, then you're talking about more funding. Where is it going to come from? Who is going to give them security and access to this land that you're talking about?
So this brings in the importance of collaboration, cooperation across a wide spectrum. So you mentioned funding, you mentioned infrastructure, road access and the likes. And all off the top of my head, I can already point out the government, I can already point out the banks, I can already point out the asset managers across the country. You see, the gist is, the opportunities in this space are huge enough, and if we're able to bring in the right partners, we can get this thing off the ground. If you look at the success story we saw in Brazil, for instance, we saw how Brazil was able to launch the agriculture in Brazil, so much so that Brazil is practically the food basket of the world today. And Nigeria has the capacity to become something like that as well. Brazil created a policy around such that the government provided the right incentive, and then a lot of investors came into Brazil, and then they opened up the country massively. Today, Brazil is the biggest exporter of soybeans and one of the largest exporters of maize as well in the world. And this is the kind of success we can replicate in Nigeria. We can have partnerships with the government, with focusing on key problems. So road access is one. Another one is insecurity, and we can also focus on problems of access to finance. So we design structures around this, and this is one of the benefits of the exchange as well. We see how these people can come together and provide immense benefit to the sector, and that's how we think that collaboration can work. So the private sector, whether it's from the technical partners, the private sector, whether it's from the companies that provide finance, the financial institutions, the government, whether it's the regulators or the government itself in terms of infrastructure provision, I think all of these work hand in hand hand in how we can get this thing off the ground.
All right. Although the government have made, laudable efforts and measures to improve the food system, the impact is still curtailed by, challenges that continuously result in low productivity, price variations, and unfavorable trade realities in the sector. What do you think private players like AFEX can do to make things better?
So private players like AFEX, and fantastic efforts made by the government so far in terms of the interventions they provided in the sector. And we see the government as the kickstarter, more or less the person that kickstarts all these engagements, kickstarts all these developments. But the private sector has a long way to go in this kind of venture. It has a lot of opportunities to bring in, a lot of resources to bring in into this kind of venture. So for AFEX, exchanges like ourselves, AFEX Commodities Exchange, are set up to solve problems. You think about the first forward contracts and the futures contracts that were developed. They were made to solve real life problems, and in our case, that's what we think. If the private sector can be incentivized in the right way, leveraging on some of the products that we have seen being implemented successfully, we think the private sector can and will come into this sector. For instance, we mentioned last year that we were able to raise about 25 billion naira in terms for processors. This money was largely provided by the private sector, and we saw how we were able to design the products innovatively to bring them into this space. One other thing very recently mentioned, like Ini mentioned, the Feed Nigeria Summit, we signed an MOU with SWACO, Southwest Agricultural Company, and then the Ogun State government. And this is based on the understanding that the private sector has a long way to go with the support of the government. So SWACO in that case is going to be a consortium lead, more or less, leveraging on products on the exchange, products provided by AFEX Commodities Exchange. And we think if we are able to leverage on these products, the staple crop processing zones that we've always talked about, implemented in some way, shape, or form, can actually get off the ground very well. And at the end of the day, the private sector is bringing the efficiency in resource allocation, is bringing the efficiency, the significant human resource they have, and the focus on value creation that the private sector provides. And we think that's how we can boost what the government has done and get to where we all want to get to.
All right, thank you. We'll have to leave it there now. Yusuf Ogumbe is investment manager with AFEX. Thank you so much for your time on Business Morning.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to the markets now. The equities is about after a break. We'll head on to the markets. Do stay with us.